This is the Bushlord from the Spanish company Joker. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on this knife, keep watching. Before we get started, there are a few things that I want to mention. First off, Joker of Spain did send the Bushlord to me so that I could share it with you. And the next thing is, well, this is the elephant in the room, and we're going to address it right away. This knife seems to be identical in almost every way to the Castrum Lars Fault knife. So let's just talk about that for a few minutes before we start looking at the knife itself. All right, so when I became aware of the Bushlord, it was actually going by a different name, Bushlord. Well, obviously that name is taken by another manufacturer of bushcraft knives, so Joker of Spain changed it to Bushlord. So if you are looking for information on this knife, you might want to try both Bushlord and Bushlord. Now, it had the striking resemblance of the Castrum Lars Fault, which actually was on my wish list for quite a bit of time, and I decided to look into it a little bit deeper. And here's what I found in doing some research. There's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of claims that this knife is plagiarized from the Lars Fault knife by Castrum, but there's other comments to the contrary as well. I have no definitive proof one way or the other, but the story goes like this. Yes, the Lars Fault knife was designed by Lars Fault, and yes, it is licensed to Castrum for sale. However, the story goes, and again, I don't have proof of this, is that Joker was the maker of the Lars Fault knife and then sold to Castrum. And that seems to make a lot of sense because I've heard that from other reliable sources that a number of Castrum's knives, in fact other manufacturers, are farming out some of the work to Joker of Spain. With good reason. They do excellent work. Joker knives are among some of the best kept secrets in the knife world today. And I have a whole playlist of Joker knives if you're interested in seeing them, and every one of them has been spot on for what its intended purpose is. And this one is no exception. So, is it a plagiarized version of the Castrum Lars Fault, or is it just one of those circumstances where Joker was making them for Castrum and then continued to make them under their own name, with maybe the very slightest variation to them? Again, I don't have an answer. If someone can point me to the actual truth, and I don't mean just internet rumor, but somewhere where one company or the other will clarify this, that would be very much appreciated. And I'll pin that comment for everybody else to read. But in the meantime, this is a knife worth looking at regardless. So what we'll do is I'll bring the camera down, focus in on the knife. We'll go over its key features, its specifications, its design, and of course, I'll do some demonstrations with it. So what I like to do always is, before I focus in on the knife itself, of course, is take a look at the sheath. Then we can put that aside and give all our attention to the design of the knife. So let me bring the sheath back in as I lay the knife down. So, nice leather sheath. Now, I will say nice, but not the very, very best leather sheaths that I've ever seen, but certainly up to the task. It is a good quality leather, thick but not overly thick, well constructed with a nice welt down here and burnished, so it looks pretty good. Double stitched, and you can see 1, 2, 3 hole rivets or eyelet rivets, whatever else you want to call them. It does have a belt loop on the back. My only concern here is that it is riveted, and I did have one of these from Joker pop out on me. The rivet at the top actually was the one that popped out. 2 rivets at the bottom. It's not the bottom ones that I had any concern about. It's the rivet at the top. I think I would prefer, as some of the knives have, to see a fold over flap that is sewn to the leather. Having said that, it hasn't come off on me yet, and actually I'm quite conscious of it so I don't jam it like I did the other one where it actually caught. There was the backpack that actually pulled the knife and broke the sheath. It does have a dangler. It's a removable dangler. It is a round carabiner style. Let's see if I can find the open side of it so that you can see this. You can see how it opens up right there. So you can take it off, or you can just let it hang if you want. But the dangler is nice because it's one of the double snap versions that allows you to take it on and off of your belt without taking your pants down or unloosen your belt at the very least. And I like danglers just because it does take it below the belt line of my backpack. Okay, nice leather sheath, but how does the knife fit in it? Well, we'll bring the knife back into the picture. Knife fits in, as you would expect, very well, snug. Okay, I'm holding it upside down, but I'm not going to give it a real hard shake because I know if I do, it will come out. It's not Kydex. And if you're looking for something that has an upside down holding capacity, then you may want to opt in for a Kydex sheath. There's no other type of retention. I think I would like if the sheath actually came a little higher on the knife, so only this much of it was protruding. You know, that's okay. I'm happy with this sheath. I may have someone make me a sheath, and then I can have the features I want on it. I do believe there is an option for a fire steel on, or a ferrocerium rod on the sheaths from Joker, but I can't confirm that. Let me just give you a look at the Joker logo. Right there. Okay, that's enough about the sheath. Let's bring that back into the picture. Now, I'll go through a few specifications, but you know, of course, that I am going to be giving you all of these in the video description, so you can either jump forward, or if you want to go back and reference it later, you can. Overall length, tip to pommel, 8.66 inches. Blade length, 4.13 inches. Blade thickness, 0.16 of an inch, or as I like to prefer to talk about it, is millimeters, 4 millimeters. So good average size, we'll call it a stout bushcraft knife. That's what Paul Kirtley refers to something like this, a stout bushcraft knife. Height of the blades from spine to edge at its tallest is 1.14 inches. The steel, excellent choice, and this is going to sound familiar, Bohler, Sleipner, I think it's Sleipner steel, which if you are into knives at all and you've heard about this steel, it's an improved version of D2 steel with more toughness and edge holding and a little bit corrosion resistance as well. The reason I say it sounds familiar, guess what the Case Lars Fault uses? Sleipner steel. Okay, handles in this case are walnut, and of course it was a leather sheath. So that's the specs for the knife out of the way. Let's just take a look at the design. And you know, regardless of who copied who, or if they were both made at the same time, it's still an outstanding design by someone who knows what they're doing when they designed a knife, someone who lived it, and that of course is Lars Fault, known in the Northern Hemisphere, in the Scandinavian countries, as the most expert person on the outdoors, kind of like our Morris Kahansky here in Canada is. This is somebody who really knows about designing the knife. This was intended as a bushcraft knife and crossing over into a survival knife because it is a little stout. It's got a little bit of weight and a little bit of thickness to it, but it's perfectly capable of all your bushcraft tasks, plus a little bit more heavy duty work on top of that. It has your typical drop point blade. It is a full Scandinavian zero-edge grind. There is no secondary bevel on it, but if you look close enough, you can tell that I've been sharpening this on ceramic and stropping it, so it's got a little, what looks like a micro bevel. I suppose it is, mostly from the stropping. It's just a little bit polished. I'm okay with that. In fact, I would almost recommend most people do this to the knife before they start using it, because just by slightly rounding over that edge, you may lose 1/1,000,000th of the slicing power, but you're going to gain 1,000 times stronger edge. Well, that's important as well. Close up on the Joker logo, the name Bushlord right there. The walnut handles, they have a liner material, two-tone, gray. Well, it almost looks purple in this light, but I think it's intended to be gray and black against the steel. Brass pins, brass lanyard tube, yes, a little piece of orange lanyard on the end of it. Overall feel in the hand is outstanding. There is one comment I'll make in a few minutes' time about the handle itself, but the feel is, you know, it's good. Okay. We'll get this out of the way as well. I have XL to XXL hands. People who watch my videos know that. So for me to find a factory-made knife that comes close to fitting my hands, I'm always excited about. And this is as close as any knife that I've held that has been stocked from the factory that will fit my hand. Now, would I like it a little bit bigger? Yeah, actually I would. I would love it just a little bit thicker. But it's working just the way it is. And that's because the general ergonomics, can you see there's a hump in the center here that increases the depth of where the palm is right here. It comes down here a little bit in the back and rounded on the end. But by the way, for anyone who wants to know why is it so important to have a rounding on the end, if you're holding your knife like this, and you do for some of the bushcraft tasks like drilling, then you want that to be rounded and not a protruding tang. On a survival knife, well, that might be different, but on a bushcraft knife, it's nice to have that rounded pommel right there. Minimal guard, people are saying, yeah, I don't know about that. It's not a stabbing knife. It was never intended to be a stabbing knife. You don't need excessive guard, just enough to index so that you know where you're at on the handle, so your hand doesn't go any more forward towards the blade. No, there is no sharpening choil on this knife, and that bothers some people. Well, okay, I'd suggest you look at another knife. But here's what I found, is that sharpening choils on Scandinavian grind knives, if you are repeatedly sharpening this, yeah, you will get a little bit of a, dip down as the metal recedes from the edge. But if you're actually removing all the metal on that Scandinavian grind, then you lessen that chance because everything is coming back, not just the edge. The whole, right to the plunge, not the plunge line, I guess it could be referred to at the start of the grind, actually moves back if you're laying the whole thing flat on the stone. One other feature I want to point is, yes, it's a Scandinavian grind, but you see how it gets a little more narrow towards the tip? Now, look at this. Look at how stout that tip is. I'll do it. That's not something I do on a regular basis, but for demonstration purpose, you can pound this into the wood and pry on it, and it's not going to damage that trip. I hesitate to say abuse a knife. Well, I won't say abuse a knife, but if you have a need for doing some prying, some tip work, then this will definitely stand up to that task. As a survival knife, you might. As a bushcraft knife, well, maybe not. I don't know about that. Okay, so those are the features of the knife. It feels good in the hand, right? But how does it actually function? Well, let's do that. Okay, at the risk of sounding like I'm making excuses before I even get started, my wood selection today was a little bit more challenging than it often is. I did find a piece of wood. The bark was off of it, so well dead, of course. I believe it is oak, but I'm not going to know for sure until it splits open because it doesn't have the characteristic central discoloration or change in colors as most oak does, but it's one dense piece of wood. Very, very tight grain. All right, so I'm dealing with something about 11 inches in length, 2.5 to 3 inches on this end. See if I can find a place that's actually going to sit for me. So, is this a good size to baton? Yeah, I think so for this knife. I don't think I would baton anything any larger than this, but I think this is fine. My knife spans it. I've got room on both sides. The only way to know is to give it a go and see what happens. Let's bring it up here so you can see what I'm doing. Oh yeah, okay, that's split well enough. Rock maple. Yeah, that's the predominant species of trees in the area. Anyway, I can tell it's rock maple now that I've got it open. A little bit of punky at one end, but the rest of that wood is good and solid. Fairly straight grain. I should be able to get something out of this I can do some feather sticking on. But the first thing I'll do is I'll quarter this and probably take it down to eighths. That way I'll have something to make a tent peg out of. All right, so I got quite a few good pieces of wood out of that small log. And this is going to be the one I make the tent peg out of. I'm thinking it's about 1 inch in this dimension and maybe just over 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch in this direction. Yes, I have a group of crows flying around over me. Must be on their territory. So I sometimes feel I need to explain myself. The demonstration is more about the techniques involved in creating a tent peg, as they can often be used for many other things that you're going to create in the field, like figure 4 traps and the like. It's not about the tent peg. That will be the end of what I do here. I'd probably do more work before actually putting it to use. But first one, of course, is going to be about notching. So let's create a L7 notch. That is hardwood. Wow. I'm 1/3 of the way into the wood, which is up and down, but just over 1 inch from the top. And we'll carve the notch out. You can get fancier with your tent pegs, but I don't think it's necessary to get any fancier than that. All right, L7 notch. Now let's put a point on the other end. All right, the next step in creating the tent peg is to put a point on the end opposite the notch. But I do want to talk about the notch just for a moment before we do that, because I didn't mention what it was like to hold the knife and use it while I was creating the notch. So to start with, the knife is certainly very capable of creating the notch, even in this hard rock maple that I'm using here. But here's the reason why. Look at the point on this. Very precise, very fine point. Critical feature of a bushcraft knife is to have a point shaped like this for carving purposes. You might think it's not as strong, but look at the tip. There's plenty of strength in that tip. You're not going to damage it. And this allows you to carve, especially in curves like I did here, or spoons, or any other woodworking project where you need to get into a tight corner. You need a fine, precise tip like this one offers. So it did a great job. Now, there is a downside to this knife, and the fact is it It does have a very sharp spine, a nice 90-degree edge on it, which I know a lot of people consider a critical feature of a bushcraft knife, and I will agree. It comes super handy and it's great to have until you start to do wood carving, and that's where you start to feel it. So in using the knife in that last demonstration, carving in like this, the knife performed flawlessly, but it left a line on my thumb, and had I done a lot of carving, it would have really irritated the pad of my thumb. Now I know there's ways around that. You could just round off the corners here towards the dip, and you know, that may be something I do. I could wear a pair of gloves. There's lots of things around it. If you really feel the need for a 90-degree spine, then you may want to do that to the edge of your knife just to keep it a little bit more comfortable on the thumb. All right, having said all of that, the next step is, of course, to put the point on this stick. Now, the whole point of this demonstration is how does it feel to hold and use the knife in reverse grip. Another bushcraft task that's often accomplished is to be able to use the knife in this direction. It uses all the muscles in your back and not necessarily your arms, your forearms, your hands. So you use the muscles in your back to do the trick, and all you need to do is raise the knife up, put it on a slant, and pull. Well, the knife is slicing, but I'll tell you that, see, big piece of wood coming off, but that is hard wood. Why did I choose such a hard piece of wood to do these demonstrations with? Well, it'll make a very strong tent peg, won't it? All right, next time I'm choosing something softer. And a little bit on the sides. All right, without coming to an absolute point, that'll definitely drive into the ground. All right, so there's my tent peg created. Now, what are my thoughts on using the knife, the Bushlord in reverse grip? Comfortable in the hand. And I know one of the things I often say is it going to be comfortable where the pommel touches my palm? And in this case, absolutely. See how soft and rounded it is? There's a little bit to catch my hand back here, but it's not so much that when it lays in my palm that it's caused me any discomfort whatsoever. What is a little uncomfortable, however, is right up here, the transition point where it comes over the edge. It should be ramped back a little bit so that when you lay your thumb on it, you don't have a 90-degree edge right here pressing into your thumb. How easy it would have been for Joker to just ramp that back a little bit. I'm not even talking about creating dished scalloped thumb placement places, or stiff thumb scallops. I guess that's what they're referred to. I'm talking about just ramping it or rounding it off. Okay. No big deal. I'm going to be doing that when I get it home. I just wanted you to show it to you in its native state. But just a little bit more of a ramp here would make it just that much more comfortable to place my thumb right here when I'm pulling it across or holding it in this direction here. Okay, that's another demonstration done. Next one, of course, will be feather sticking. All right, here are two more splits off of that billet or log that I had a minute ago. I'm just going over them, looking at the grain. I think they're probably pretty much equal. This one, that's a little bit of the pith. I don't want the center. I don't think I'll use that. I think I'll use this one. The only concern I have with these pieces of wood is their age and the fact that there are bug holes in it. Now, the bug holes don't stop you from using the wood, obviously, but what they do is when you're creating a feather, a nice curl running down, hits a bug hole, and then it seems to want to jump off. But we'll see where it goes. Now, there's lots of good wood here that I can work with, and if not, I've got lots of other sticks. All right, let's give it a shot, see what this feather's like. Lay the knife down, raise it until it engages the wood, and slide it forward. I'm losing them. There, that's better. Yes, sir, look at that. That's what you expect from a bushcraft knife, is for it to be able to create nice curls on a piece of wood. Curls like these will light up so well, and this is a perfect day for using feather sticks like this to create your fire. Everything is wet. Even if I find a good amount of birch bark, which will burn wet, of course, and then I'm looking for some really fine kindling to extend that until the fire is well established. That's where the trouble begins, because all the fine little sticks that I could find on the trees here are all going to be damp. At least the bark will be damp. If if not the wood itself. So to be able to split open a piece of wood, take out quarters like this, or quarters or eighths, I think this was eighths, maybe even more, to be able to create that fine kind of kindling, this is what you need to do, or need to be able to do when the need arises to be able to create the fine kindling. And this can actually be used to catch your spark from a ferrocerium rod by doing the little tiny ones way out here towards the end, the little bugles. See if I can do one more and show it to you. I lost it. Where'd it go? All right, let's do another one. Let's work on this outside edge and see if I can't create one of those little bugles. You have to... I'm getting fine curls, but oh no! Every time I go for the ultra fine bugles, I lose it at the last moment. There we go. That's a bit better. Where'd he go? He wrapped himself up inside of the bundle right there. You can probably, hopefully you can still see it. But those are the ones that'll catch a spark. Now that's not a full feather stick, of course. That is just the beginnings. You'd need to go around the stick and get as much of that as possible, and 2 or 3 of these at a minimum to get a fire going in wet conditions. But the point of that exercise was to show that this knife will create a feather stick. Now, what are my impressions in using it? Okay, so I'm comfortable in the hand. Even though it is a little bit small, and I found I did have to tell myself, this is just me of course, to relax my grip a little bit so I don't tire my hand out, it's still very comfortable. Obviously no hot spots, no pressure points whatsoever. This knife was designed by an ultimate bushcrafter to be an ultimate bushcraft knife, so I didn't expect that there'd be any issues whatsoever with it, and there are not. There's a long flat straightaway here before you reach the curve, and that curve is gentle. Now what's the advantage of that? Well, you might argue, Morris Kahansky would say a continuous curve is a better feather sticker, and he's right because there's more cutting surface to use on the blade. But if you want something that can split wood and do a lot of the other tasks, you need that flat straightaway here. But when you get down towards here, it's that gentle curve that allows you to get the control so it doesn't run off of the knife in a hurry, and you can get the little, oh, there's one of those good little bugles. I call those bugles. They're just tiny, tight little curls down there. So you'd want that gentle curve on your knife for creating the feathers that are really fine towards the tip. And you want the control at the same time. It's also a full 0 ground Scandinavian. Yes, a little bit of a polished secondary on it, micro polished secondary on it. The only thing I would say is it's thick. But 4 millimeters isn't real thick. There are knives that are plenty thicker than that. So that's where this knife starts to cross over from bushcraft into survival. It will do all the bushcraft tasks with strength enough for survival tasks, but if it was a little bit thinner, it would probably carve just a little bit better. So there's always some compromise to be made on it. But this is a joy to hold, a joy to use, because this was designed precisely for bushcraft, and it certainly excels at it. Now there's one last task of it, and that is scraping. So let's do that. And I think I mentioned when I started out today just how wet it is here. I didn't say why, but we had a rain overnight, so everything is soaking wet. I mean, absolutely soaked here right now. So I was just looking for a little tray, some kind of a platform I could put my scrapings on in order to catch them and give them a spark. So I'm using a couple pieces of bark here. Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how that works out. I'm not convinced it will, but with a little luck it will. All right, same one of those splits. This is the alternate one I was going to use for feather sticking. No, you know what? We're not going to use that. We'll just go right down on top of this one. So, carve off some very lightweight fuzz off of the stick itself. Got some spots there where it's catching and falling off, but all right, let's just put those aside and move on to the birch or the fatwood. Last time I did this, I got a splinter in my thumb, and the hole is still there from it. Let's see if I can avoid getting splinters off of this piece of fatwood. Okay. Put the stick right through the base of bark. All right, I would say it scrapes fat wood well enough. And the last thing, of course, is my ferrocerium rod. A little oxidized for lack of use, but let's see what we can do with it. There, that's better. Okay, scrapes wood, scrapes fat wood, scrapes a ferrocerium rod. I would say it's a good scraper. All right, now we can wrap this video up. All right, a few final thoughts for the Bushlord from Joker Knives of Spain. Now, so at the risk of sounding like I'm overdoing this, this is an absolute joy to use. It certainly is. It shows that this was designed by a bushcraft and survival expert, Lars Falt. He absolutely knows what he's doing about, especially in cold climates, and all of his knowledge and experience comes out so well in this knife. This is, if I was to choose my own design, I don't think I can improve upon this one little bit. Okay, I could make the handles a little bit fatter, right, to fit my hands, but other than that, this handle's going to fit 99.9% of the people who pick it up. I cannot imagine anybody else saying this is too big, or most people saying it is too small. But yeah, and even at that, I can use it just fine. It's just fine. Like, it doesn't feel as if I'm impaired by the size of the handle. It works well just the same. Is there anything that I would change on this knife? I can't think of anything. I mean, yes, it does have a 90-degree spine, which is a little higher than the thumb. Nothing you can't overcome. It does have a thicker blade stock than a nice fine carving knife, but actually you probably want that if you're going to be doing the tasks I just did, like batoning with it. You're going to want that. I don't think there's anything I could change on this. Steel choice, Sleipner, Bohler Sleipner steel, you know, nothing, absolutely nothing. All I've done to this knife in the 4 months that I've been testing it is drop it, and on 2 occasions, maybe 3, run it down a ceramic rod just to bring that hair-popping sharpness back to. Oh yeah, there is one small thing. Just change the ramp right here, and I'm going to do that myself when I get it home. I just wanted you to see it as is. Okay, I think I've gone on enough about the Bushlord from Joker Knives of Spain. I'll be putting the links to where you can take another look at this knife in the video description, as well as the description, both in imperial and in metric sizes. I invite you, if you have any comments or questions, to put them in the comments section. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.